Okay, students, welcome to Lesson 8. We're talking about polynomial and rational inequalities. So right here we're taking the idea of inequalities and then moving it to another type or level of algebraic relationship, polynomial and rational expressions. Now, I'm going to go through this overview, and then after this I'm going to be posting 3 videos. The first video is going to be about explaining the basic idea of this lesson. And then 2, I'm going to do a video set on problems on 6.5. I will try to use the example problems. Some of you have been asking about, videos that go along with the problems. That is really actually very good. And then the third video will be on 6.6 video. I'll try to get these out before the office hours so you could look at them. Now let's take a moment and look at this lesson. So we're going to begin with the advanced organizer. So I'm going to type on that or click that. Okay, so here we go. This is introducing the idea. These are your outcomes. These 5 particular items. I am going to be explaining these with a method. So look at the videos here, but find critical numbers, test interval or test values, test points, and then determine the correct interval, and then describe the solution set using interval notation. So, those 5 things are things that you need to be able to do. And I'm going to introduce them by use of examples. And again, here's your tasks, your readings, your assignments, discussion. Let's hold off on that discussion till after 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Your quiz, your study guide for your test 2, and then a review for your midterm. I mean, not for your midterm, for going over the problems for that study guide. Okay, didn't mean to alarm you right there, right now. But there you go. So those are the things that you need to be able to do. So let's do this. Let's click on number 2. We're talking about assignments. Okay, so notice here we have these 2 readings here. Solving the quadratic inequalities, solving polynomial and rational inequalities. Actually a very well done set of instructional materials, and then there are your problems there. Now I may have said this before, I'm not too sure, but I would do the problems before you do the quiz the first time. I would as a bare minimum do one of each type of problem, but I would, if I was taking the course, have those problems done at some point and have that written out in my binder. So just keep that thought in mind. All right. So what I want to do is I want to click on this first lesson, and I'd like to take a moment and explain this if I could. I like the book. I think it's very helpful. Here are your learning objectives. Let me straighten this out here. Okay, so check solutions and then solve inequalities or quadratic inequalities. There's a good definition. This is a good question. Are -3, -2, and -1 a solution to this? Notice it's a quadratic right here, and you want to know if it's less than or equal to 0. So 0 or a negative number, right, if it's less than 0. And lo and behold, you have this one does not work, this one does work, this one does work. And so you could answer the question. Now these values that separate the regions from working and not working are called critical numbers. Critical numbers. Now you could solve quadratic inequalities by a sign chart. So here's an example. Here's a quadratic inequality. See the inequality symbol. And I solved it as it was a quadratic, and their critical numbers are -1 and 7. So notice I have a number line. Here's -1 and here's 7. And what I want to do is I I want to study this out using a sign chart. So here's a sign chart for all of the values from -4 to 10. Now remember, I was looking for it where it was greater than or equal to 0. So the greater than or equal to 0 is this region right here. So keep that in mind. Now if I scroll down here, I'll have to say, if it's true for one point in the region, it's true for the whole region here, the whole region. And so here's your answer in interval notation. Again, here's the second. It's a quadratic. Notice the a term before the x squared. And notice here I'm looking for where it's greater than 0. So it can't be 0. It has to be greater than 0. Or so it has to be positive. Does that make any sense? So I solve it as if it was a quadratic. I have these two critical numbers. I plot them on my number line. And then I pick these values. They're called test values. And I test it for those values. And if it's true for whatever the sign was, in other words, 2, it was negative. So it's negative for every region value in the region here. And on the other one was 5. I tested it and it was positive. So it's true for every value here. And the same thing over here with the -1. Sorry if I'm talking too fast. Remember, I wanted to know where it was positive. So it's positive in this region. It's positive in this region. However, it can't be 0, so that's an open circle there and an open circle there. Now notice how I show the answer. This region in interval notation is -infinity up to 1/2, but not including the 1/2. This is just a fancy symbol for a union, okay? Like a union has a group of workers, okay? So that's a way to look at it. And then 3, remember 3 is not included, so that's why it's a parenthesis here, till forever. That's infinity. There's no bracket here because you can't get to infinity unless you're Buzz Lightyear and you get to infinity and beyond. Alright, now here's example 4. In this problem I have a quadratic and I want to know where it's less than or equal to 0. I can't factor it. I'm going to use a quadratic formula. Here's a quadratic formula right here. Approximate answers using my calculator, -2.5 and 4.5. Again, I go through the same rigmarole, but this time I only have to test a couple values here. And so I use these as test values. I find positive, negative, positive, and my answer laid out there. I'm sorry these videos don't seem to work right now. I'm going to put in a little note about that. Alright, example 5. Again, here I have a quadratic. I want to know where it's greater than or equal to 0. Well, you know, the problem here is we're trying to use a quadratic formula. Notice I get an answer here. This is a complex number. It's got the real and imaginary part. And you know what? You cannot graph imaginary numbers on a real number line. Okay? Imagine that. So, the answer is, if you plugged in all these values, it's all positive here. So the question is where is that quadratic greater than or equal to 0? It's greater than or equal to 0 everywhere, or all real. There's the interval notation for all real. Alright, so here's some takeaways we get with this. Quadratic inequalities can have an infinite solution. Do a sign chart. Find the x values. The sign chart is bounded by critical values. You're looking for something that's either positive or negative. Now remember, on your assignment, you don't have all of these problems. Now I like this problem right here. Where is the graph greater than or equal to 0? No, it's saying less than or equal to 0. It's less than or equal to 0 here. Now we'll talk more about this when we talk about functions, but that is not required and not going to be on your test. But if you scroll down here, you'll come to the other problems here. There's some more problems. Here's a couple discussion point questions, which I like, and then you have your answers. So there you go. Okay, back to your lesson 8 tasks. Okay, so here's another reading, and this is a good explanation over the first part. Well, actually, I need to go back up here, and I need to point out to you that the second part, Okay, the second part has to do with polynomial and rational inequalities. And that's the same type of problem. Hold on. Okay, that's the same type of problem, but here we're having a polynomial, got to go through the same procedure. And here I use my factoring skills. I go through the same procedure again, and I show my answer. Okay, now don't be misled here. Here we have rational inequalities. So here I have my division bar. I have factors on the top, factors on the bottom. Notice my critical numbers would be 4, -2, and 1. Go through my procedure. Now keep in mind that 1 is a value that would cause your denominator to be 0, so 1 is not a solution. Just kind of keep that in mind. So I have some test values, I work that out, and notice in my answer I'm showing 1 is not a solution. So keep that thought in mind. Now there's other ways to work rational inequalities. You'll have to do a little manipulation. I will try to encourage you to follow through with that after you get the basics down. Okay, back to our tasks here. Now this third one is another approach, another lesson approach on solving the quadratic and polynomial. This is a great video. Use the videos. Don't forget that there are other videos linked up in Khan Academy that you could have access to, and it is contextually linked. And if you notice the links on the left, that will help you. Here's a lesson on rational inequalities. Again, another approach to it, not that different, but another textbook, I guess you could say. And then lesson 8, discussion. Like I said here, hold off on this till after we start office hours, because I want to put some stuff up there. You got your quiz 8, all right, your test 2 study guide, and your study guide solutions. I do encourage you very much to look at those. Now notice you got test 2. So test 2 is starting, and you have 4 days to take test 2. Please remember what you learned on test 1, and that may help you. All right. Well, we could talk a lot more about this, but don't be intimidated by this information. And don't start with the hardest problems. Start with the easiest problems and get help. If embedded tutoring is working for you, fine. If you don't like that, try the smart thinking. Some of our students are moving into that, and it's helping them out. And as always, I'm always available in office hours to answer questions, and I have been conducting some sessions outside of that time. So please contact me. I'm looking at your discussion points, looking at your emails, and we'll try to keep moving forward. Thank you, and best wishes.